Great. Good morning, parents. Good evening, wherever you're tuning in from. I pray that you're well. My name is Simon Muia. I just want to share a few thoughts about a parenting style that is very effective in bringing out our children, especially the adolescent. That is the authoritative parenting style. One of the authors, that is Lawrence Steinberg, has written quite a bit, and one of the greatest authors I love has written about counseling adolescents. And one of the things he's written about is he's mentioned why the role of parenting is important. So he says that the process of antisocial peer group formation in adolescence begins in the home. During childhood, problematic parent-child relationships, ones that are coercive and hostile, lead to the development of an antisocial disposition in the child. So family matters. Family is the most important context in the raising of our children. Most of the adolescent behavioral problems start in childhood. So adolescents don't begin having behavioral problems just at puberty stage, but it starts from childhood that maybe manifests in adolescence. So it's important that we are able to look at the behavior of our children as partly up to us as parents to model. So why the style of parenting matters to the adolescent. One of the authors, Dr. Francis Jensen, who is a neurologist, has written a book on the teenage brain, and this is what she says. The brain and bodies of adolescents undergoes extensive reorganization, and their apparent recklessness, rudeness, and cluelessness are not totally their fault. Almost all of this is neurologically, psychologically, physiologically explainable. As a parent and educators, we need to be to remind ourselves of this daily and often hourly. So she just emphasizes the role of parenting in bringing out our children. So the frontal cortex, that she said, she talks about that. The frontal cortex, that is the front part of the brain, and the hippocampus, that is the part of the brain that deals with the memory, are not fully matured until the mid-20s. So children, young adults are constantly at risk. There is, name it, alcohol risk, substance abuse, mental illness, and so on. So the most effective preventive measure is in the family context, and the parenting style really matters. And another author, Squiglia and others have written a book on the influence of. They've actually written an article on the influence of substance abuse on adolescent brain development, and they've said that the brain is more vulnerable to influences during periods of plasticity. One area of the adolescent brain that is especially vulnerable to the harmful effects of alcohol is the hippocampus, which is important for memory, and also the prefrontal cortex that is very key in putting brakes on impulsive behavior. So those parts of the brain that are very crucial are really affected when the adolescent is predisposed to substance abuse. But teenagers do not have the same tolerance to life stresses as adults do. That's very key to understand. And also the brain circuits, not just the hormones, explain why teenagers are moody, impulsive, bored, why they are out, they act out, talk talk back and don't pay attention. Why drugs and alcohol are so dangerous to them at that age, and why they make poor decisions about drinking and so on. So it's important for us to understand that the brain of the teenager is highly plastic in terms of malleable and very vulnerable to certain aspects if parenting is not taken care of. So parenting styles and their effects, I'm going to talk about. Many authors have actually written about this. They have different ways of calling this, but I'm going to focus on what Diana and Martin, Basco, and Davis has come up with in terms of defining parenting in the areas of responding to the needs of the children and also demanding there's something from the children in terms of the response of the children. You have to demand either obedience or response to your care about the children. And this is grouped into 4 kind of parenting styles that you can see on your screen, that shows that a parent can either be an authoritarian, it can be also either an authoritative parent or indifferent parent or indulgent parent. Both authoritarian parent and indifferent parent are adult-centered. The difference is on the responsiveness of the parent. Now, the authoritative parent and the indulgent parent are child-centered. The difference is on the demandingness of the parent. So the parent in the indulgent kind of parenting style does not even confront the child, is over involved and blood roles, and the role of the parent is not very clear. They have few rules and expectations, so they have high responsiveness in terms of they are so much on the child, and their focus is for the child to be happy, but they forget that they need also to guide the child. And authoritative kind of parenting is what I'm going to focus on more, about being warm and firm at the same time. Authoritarian parenting is where now the parent demands more than is even given the child. Indifferent parent does not demand and does not give. He's just very selfish kind of parenting, very detached, distant, withdrawn, absent. Authoritative kind of parenting, let me explain further. So there's a good balance between demanding of their child's and responding to their needs. There's also some warmth and firmness in the same sort of at the same equilibrium balance. There's a balance of setting standards for the child, so the child does not just do things as they please. There's also the forming of expectation consistent with the child's needs and capabilities. So the parent is able to look at the child, look at the temperament, see, be able to know their child before they even demand some response from them. The child learns to be self-reliant and with a strong sense of initiative. That's really, really important. And that's what we'll focus on more. But let me look at the other kind of parenting just in brief. We have authoritarian kind of parenting where the parent does not respond to the child's need. They value the child's obedience more than them reaching out to the child and warming up to the child. They're very punitive, harsh discipline. They don't encourage independent behavior. They place a good deal of importance on restricting child's autonomy, and the child ends up becoming really embittered and discouraged. It's almost like how Ephesians 6:4 talks about fathers not exasperating their children, instead to bring them up in the training and instruction of the Lord. So this kind of parenting, authoritarian kind of parenting, is very exasperating on the child. It almost like puts the child in a stress moment, in a stress atmosphere throughout. The other kind of parenting that I would want to talk about just briefly is the indulgent kind of parenting. As the picture shows here, the parent has totally no control of their children. They are more passive. Their main concern is to raise happy children. The other kind is a different kind of parenting. As this picture shows here, there's a hand almost like pushing away the child, not wanting to be involved, doesn't know the child, rarely considers their child's opinion. They are more neglectful. They know very little about the child's development. They do not invest energy or time interacting with their adolescent child. So now let's look at the practical aspects of the authoritative kind of parenting, because that's very important. Authoritative kind of parenting. One of them is you've got to provide appropriate balance between restrictiveness and autonomy. What I mean is that the adolescent has an opportunity to develop self-reliance while providing standards, while the parent has to provide standards, limits, and guides the teenagers. And this teenager still needs a lot of this. They need a lot of guidance. They need a lot of limits and standards, but they are able to develop this self-reliance. So there's a balance of restrictiveness, but also there's also that aspect of autonomy that you're allowing your child to have. There's also children are able to develop competency and an enhanced ability to withstand a variety of potentially negative influences. That's very key for the child, because at adolescence, the child is highly vulnerable to peer pressure, and because the brain is growing, they're experiencing some of these hormones for the first time. And this kind of parenting can set the stage for them to actually have this competency that is really required in waging or rather going through these turbulent times of their lives. Authoritative parenting shields them from these risks. So the second aspect, the practical aspects of authoritative kind of parenting is that do not make demands, but engage your child. That's very key, because the child is now, at the adolescent, the child is actually becoming an adult, and their autonomy and identity are key in their life, and engaging promotes intellectual development of the child. And also authoritative parents are able to differentiate between moral issues and children's personal decisions. And that's one of the things that parents really fight about. Actually, they say parents argue about the mundane aspects and things that are not very important, things like curfews, leisure time, clothing, cleanliness of their bedrooms. But the core thing they miss out. So sometimes you can make a big issue out of a personal decision that the child is making, and it's not really a moral matter. That's an aspect. The other aspect is foster a warm parent-child relationship. Adolescence is an age where the adolescent might feel that they are withdrawn and they do not want to be attached to their parents. But once you apply this kind of parenting style, the adolescent actually grows into more wanting to admire and form strong attachments to their parents. Interesting. It goes against this self-fulfilling prophecy, that an expectation that is realized because we act in ways that make it happen. And sometimes if I feel like the adolescent has no control and they're going to rebel anyways, that is not true. When we apply this kind of parenting style, our children are actually drawn to us. They feel more comfortable. Adolescents are more open to their parents' influence, even though there are at times when their peers' influence competes with their parents. Adolescents value the quality of relationship. Meal times together can foster this. It's not that meal times together is what the adolescent is looking for, but they're looking for quality relationship. And so the meal times can actually be an aspect where this can be fostered. Non-authoritative parenting style produces adolescents who have relationships who will have relationships that their parents disapprove of, and this opens doors for to disapproved behavior linked to these kind of friendships. The fourth thing I would like to talk about, and the practical aspects of the power of the authoritative parenting, is being responsible to the child, being responsive to the child's own behavior, temperament, and personality. Children are different. Some are hyper, some are not, some are introverted, some are extroverted. It's important that having this knowledge of the child's behavior is very key to foster autonomy and self-identity that the adolescent brain is wired for. The relationship between the adolescent competence and authoritative parenting may be the result of the reciprocal cycle in which a child's psychosocial maturity leads to authoritative parenting. That's very key for us to understand that. Non-authoritative parenting may lead to development of emotional and behavioral problems, which lead to parents to disengage even more. So there's that reciprocal kind of cycle between the child's psychosocial maturity and the parents' style, and one can trigger the other. So it's important for us to understand that. One of the greatest authors I love, Lawrence Steinberg, has written a book, just 10 basic principles of good parenting. And one of the practicals, some of the practicals he gave is that what you do matters. So it's important for us as parents to know that our children do not just listen to us, but they also watch what we do. So what we do matters. We cannot be too loving. It's important for us to be able to have that boundary in terms of letting the child know the limits. Not so much too loving in a way that spoils the child, like we have seen in the indulgent kind of parenting style. Be involved in your child's life, very key. Being there at school, being there when they need you most, being there as they grow, even in their thoughts. Finding a confidant in you as a parent is very key for the child. Adopt your parenting to fit your child. That's what we've talked about before. And establish rules and set limits. It's very key for the adolescent. They need to learn authority. They need to learn authority that guides them into life. Help foster your child's independence. It's very key. Be consistent. Don't say one thing one time and another the other time. Avoid harsh discipline. Explain your rules and decisions. Don't just make rules like the authoritarian kind of parenting, but explain your rules and decisions, then treat your child with respect. So some conclusions. Teenage years have been termed as a second age of opportunity. So as parents, we have to be careful not to lose this age of opportunity because you might not get it again. So the adolescent years are the second age of opportunity. The first age is the formative years, but the second age of opportunity where the brain is wired to almost do this they call synaptic pruning, where what is the connections that are not important, the brain just discards and makes sure that there is more efficiency in the connections that matter. So parents who have fostered a warm and loving environment need not fear when their children reach adolescence. They do not fear because they have sort of set them up for the world. The church can foster and pioneer the ground for breeding the next generation of disciples. Very key by focusing on the parenting and focusing on family as a major context on the development of the adolescent. Then the church should not take away this role from the parents, but should play complementary role. That's very key. The church is not there to parent the children, but to help equip the parents so that they can play their role. I hope that this is helpful to you and you can be able to apply this and be able to learn how best we can bring out a generation of children who are more mature, ready to take up the world, and do not have a problem with authority. Thank you very much.